Hello and welcome to our overview of the Libra lunar eclipse that is happening on March 25th, 2024. We are going to be referencing a lot of Ptolemy for this video, but if you go to the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom, I go into even more detail into Ptolemy, into working with eclipses, into not working with eclipses, and into the timing of this eclipse, which I think is the thing that is the most fascinating when it comes to eclipses, and I'm going to explain that in this video as I also show you the chart. So we are going to dive in. We're going to share the screen so that you can see what is going on with this lunar eclipse happening in Libra on March 25th. And so what we can see here is, again, your hallmark that there is at least a full moon is that the moon at 5 degrees and 7 minutes of Libra is exactly opposite the sun at 5 degrees and 7 minutes of Aries. The reason we know this is an eclipse is because it is within the 15-degree orb of the nodes here. The north node down with the sun in Aries, the south node up with the moon in Libra. This will be a lunar eclipse because it is a full moon. So you can picture this with the sun down here and the earth in the way eclipsing the moon. So that's how we know it's a lunar eclipse. The shadow of the earth will block the ability of the sun to fully light up the moon as the sun normally would do during a full moon. Normally, the sun and the moon are not at the perfect angle for the earth to get right in the way of the sun, so you can have the sun lighting up the moon. But a few times a year, what we get is that they are at that perfect angle where the earth is right there, so the sun's light cannot get all the way to the moon. So now that we kind of know what an eclipse is and what the nature of this eclipse is, which type and which variety, we can get into analyzing the eclipse itself. There is a lot that goes into the analysis of an eclipse. If you look at sources like Abu Mashar, Masha Allah, Ptolemy, William Ramsay, throughout history, people have tried to make sense not only of the significations of an eclipse, what it means, but who it means those things for, what nations it means those things for, what portions of the people of that nation, and what weather is associated with it. There's a lot that goes into it. And not the least of which is the timing of the unfolding of those events, and also the increase of those events and the decrease of those events, the major plot thickening or the major plot thinning of that event and things going on around it. For the last Libra eclipse, I was following Venus very closely. And every time Venus goes through a change in her phase or in her sign or in aspect to another significant planet, I have noticed the timeline of that eclipse kind of syncing up with that, or of things surrounding that eclipse that seem to be more associated, syncing up with that as well. And so for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the eclipse and say, okay, how eclipsed is this moon? Because one of the indicators is if the moon is fully eclipsed, you're going to have fuller effects of that eclipse. If it's not as eclipsed, then you're going to have less. It's like turning the volume all the way up or just a little bit. This is a penumbral eclipse. It is not a full complete eclipse. So we will see that maybe it's a more subtle side or turning the volume down, if only a little, on this. The sun is, of course, going to be separating from the opposition with the moon as the moon then applies to oppose Mercury. So what we see here is the moon is going to keep moving forward, increasing in numbers here as she progresses through Libra throughout the day. And eventually her next aspect she will make is with Mercury. So again, the thing that we might see is communication and relationships becoming a prominent thing here, especially with a lunar eclipse being more about people or personal things. The people are more affected by a lunar eclipse. The rulership of an organization or a nation are more affected by a solar eclipse. So that's one of your key go-to, who's getting the most out of this or who's receiving this the most, clues to be able to reference. So this is a lunar eclipse. We're thinking about the people. It's in Libra. We're thinking about Libran aspects of, again, relationships, one-on-one agreements of things, justice and ideals. And then with the moon then moving towards Mercury, I'm wondering about taking action towards ideals or thinking about the way that communication is unfolding in relationships. Now, in things like Picatrix, which is an astrological magic grimoire, it will say that while eclipses do deconstruct or destroy things to rebuild them, you can get beneficial results for beneficial signs or signals. You can get malefic results for malefic things. What we're seeing with this one is a little bit better than the eclipse that we saw in Libra last time, where the ruler of the eclipse, which is Venus, was in her fall in Virgo. This time she is in exaltation in Pisces. So that's a little bit hopeful, in my opinion. She is separating from this conjunction with Saturn. So again, that helps her a little bit. And most recently, she is separating from a sextile aspect with the other benefic, Jupiter. So this is something to keep in mind, that while she is co-present with both malefics here, and we're not saying that it's perfectly without turbulence, there is this walking away from that with Venus in her power, in her exaltation, being uplifted. Hopefully themes of peace come up with this, with that Venus energy influencing relationships. But again, this is about people. And so peoples who might be affected, that would be good if you have peace with other people. Wouldn't that be a lovely Piscean dream for us to fulfill? So we have this also kind of showing up here. On a more personal note, it's about not really working with it individually. So I really do like to emphasize, when we're looking at eclipses, we can say, ooh, what might happen? How might this unfold? What can we expect? But when you're thinking about folk magic or setting intentions on your personal life or in with people around you, I really do want to emphasize that astrological magicians in general do not recommend working with eclipses for the purpose and for the reason that we explained from Picatrix earlier, where everything is being deconstructed under the sun and the moon. Those two up there are sort of hold the reins and the strings of what goes on down here in what is considered the composite world of the Picatrix. Everything made up of elements is a composition of those elements, is the composite world. And everything in the composite world is subject to change during times of eclipse. So while things are being destroyed and recreated, it's best for us to focus on I like to use the analogy of an actor on a stage. The stage is being set, the scenery is being moved into place. You as the actor simply wait to see what the scenery is that you have to work with, wait to see what the props are that you have to work with, and then embody the show from there. See what resources become abundant for you, see what path becomes most clear, and then go in that direction. So that is why my affirmation for this is balance is revealed to me. You don't have to go seeking it this time. Just look and observe and see where balance is being revealed to you. And in fact, on a personal level, I recommend giving yourself a spa day or taking yourself on a date for this so that you can just rest, bide your energy, and be prepared for what comes next. Really delving into that Venus in Pisces energy as she rules the relationships that are falling into line for us right now. So those are my recommendations on a personal level. But let's dive into the mundane astrology of this eclipse and when we will see the significations of it. Because the interesting thing is, you may not notice that day the significations of the eclipse as a mundane event beginning to unfold. As a transiting event in your own life, you may notice big changes happening around that time. It may trigger things by transit, but its own story that it is giving birth to actually doesn't have to necessarily start on the day of the eclipse. There are cases where that is true, but when we refer to Ptolemy as look at where the eclipse happens in the chart for the location that you're talking about. And I've got it here in Virginia, which is going to be very similar. I can actually correct this to Washington, D.C., just to reflect the capital of our nation. And we can see it really doesn't change much. But what we're seeing is the eclipse is happening in a visible location. It is above this horizon, above the ascendant line. So it is right up in the top of the sky that this eclipse will occur, which means because it is visible from where we are, if it is visible to you, it is more likely that that area that can see it is going to receive its effects. It's one of the indicators of, can you see it? If so, it probably is talking to you because it can see you too. So we can see that, United States at least is getting a lot of attention from the eclipses last year into this year as they are on that Libra Aries axis. So we can assume that some of this penumbral eclipse effects are going to unfold for noticeable ways for us here, at least in the United States and anywhere else where this eclipse is visible. If you can see it, then you will receive some of those effects. At different longitudes and latitudes, you will see it in different degrees or for different periods of time. So while I'm using the longest period of time for this signification, that may not be the case for literally everybody. If you see it and are able to perceive it less, then the timing will also decrease as well. So when I do some research online and find out how long is this eclipse going to last, it's going to last about 4 hours and 39 minutes from beginning to end. When we look at Ptolemy says for eclipses, you look at how long they're lasting in equinoctial hours, which is just normal hours for the place that you're in, and you say, however many hours it lasts. In a solar eclipse, it's going to be that many years. And in a lunar eclipse like this one, it's going to be that many months. So sun is years, moon is months. If this is 4.6 hours long, then this will be 4.6 months that this effect of the lunar eclipse will last. But again, it's not necessarily starting on the day of the eclipse. Ptolemy continues to say, you will note the beginning of these eclipse significations by the of the moon in the top hemisphere of the chart. So he breaks the chart top here, this top half above the AC and the DC down, and says if it's in the eastern horizon near the ascendant, it's going to happen pretty quickly right away. If it's up here, it's going to happen in the following quarter. So that's when it will start of the year. And if it's down here, it'll happen in the third quarter of that year. So we're going to push this out about 4 months before we start seeing the significations of the eclipse. As the intensification of the themes of that eclipse based on other factors as well, which is going to put the intensification of those factors right about in the middle of that 4-month period. So 4 months-ish, 4.5 or so months from now, we will start seeing the effects of the eclipse. Roughly 2 months into that, halfway into that, we will see intensification of those effects. So if we count from March 25th, we go April, May, June, July, and then about a half. So let's put it towards August. And we'll say that's when it's going to start, somewhere in August. And then if we think it's going to start in August and last about 4.5 months, actually, we're going to go to July and say in August, we might start seeing those intensifications for where this timing happens. If you want the spelled out details of this, I actually do have all the quotes from Ptolemy, all the math laid out, and this chart there for study in the As Above, So Below for the week of March 18th through the 23rd on the free tier of the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom. So all you have to do is follow the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom on Patreon, and you will see this all spelled out in a lot of detail because I made sure to go into it pretty in depth, which I'm very proud of. So because the moon is on the midheaven, Ptolemy says if on the midheaven in the second 4 months and the middle third of the year, that is where we are quoting to find where is this going to start. So the second 4 months is when it starts, and the middle third is when we see the intensifications, which gives us the starting point of around August, and somewhere in the September perhaps area, September, maybe early October, we'll see those intensifications. So now that I've been able to check my math, again, this is all spelled out in detail in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom Patreon on the free tier. And I do this every week, not as in depth as with the eclipse, but we do something for astrology and folk magic every week there too. So this is the overview of the eclipse. This is pretty much what I wanted to cover, at least here. This is the first in a series of eclipses. So the next one will be a solar eclipse, which will happen on April 8th. That one has a lot happening around it. So that is probably going to be a bit of a longer video, probably going to be more in depth in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom Patreon. And there's a lot to really study with that. It is a solar eclipse, so it's going to affect the leadership of the places where it is visible, and it is visible over the United States. So for everybody who is from the United States here and you're thinking about, does this affect us? This is a case where we will say, yes, very likely it will. And it is a total solar eclipse. So again, it's going to be very poignant and very noticeable in the way that it shows up. And I will be guiding you through it, giving you calm, rational, practical, but not too sugar-coated expressions that we can expect using the rational astrology and then guiding ourselves through the event from there. The April eclipse also has a really unique trait of making visible a comet that will be at the same time, which is an additional omen that Ptolemy and also William Ramsay bring into their interpretations of events that happen in the sky. Not necessarily expecting them to be together, but in this case, we do have that happening next time. So feel free to follow along, subscribe to anything you want to subscribe to, whether it's on social media at Crystal and Sophia, here on YouTube at the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom, or on Patreon at the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom, where we can keep this relationship going and you can stay in the loop and feel empowered to make choices aligned with what the timing is doing for you. If you are wondering if these eclipses are impactful for you as a person, you can look at your chart and notice what is going on the Aries Libra axis for you. Are there prominent planets there? Are they on angles for you? If the answer is yes to either of those, then yes, this may be a time of prominent change that you are going through in your life. And so you can give yourself the grace to know that a lot is happening for you right now. A little bit, you are the main character. You are being called upon to take action or to receive calling and action in certain directions. So hopefully that gives you validation in what you're feeling right now as well. And I will be here through all of it to support in every way that I can. And I hope that you have a wonderful experience. I hope that all of the best things come to pass, that exalted Venus gives us a little bit of an oomph. And I will see you for the next one.